Hi everyone, welcome to the Ice from the Mosh Pit. We're on the road this week with, we're lucky enough to be on the road with Savage in their studio. Thank you for having us, guys.
Pleasure. Welcome.
Great. Thank you.
So, you've been going for quite a while now. Tell people that might not know anything about you a bit about the band. About when did it all start and...
Me and Andy first got together in 1978.
Yes, I was 15.
He was 15, I was 18.
I wasn't even born then, I was born in 1980.
All right, then don't rub it in.
I wasn't rubbing it in at all. It was just...
And Junior over here wasn't even an apple in his father's eye at that time.
Because you were a virgin, weren't you, at that point?
No, Andrew, I wasn't.
You mean he's still not?
Yeah, we started in 1978. Andy's brother Simon, who we sadly lost last year, was the original drummer.
Right.
And it was actually Simon I was after. I wasn't really bothered about this one.
No, it's just unfortunate. Sometimes it happens.
But it turned out to be fortuitous that we got together. We spent quite a few years. I mean, we went through the early parts of New Wobham because Simon didn't last very long as drummer. He went off. We spent quite a while without a drummer.
Right.
So our other bands were taking off and we were sat there going, we're better than them. We wasn't really doing anything. Dave Linley joined us in 1980. And that's when we started doing compilation albums. The first one we did was Scene of the Crime, which is the one that Lars picked up. And
right.
They started doing Let It Loose and Dirty Money. Then we did one for Ebony Records, Metal Fatigue. Mm-hmm. And then we did our own AA side single, which literally, I think it was within the first month we was releasing it, Daryl, who was the guy that ran Ebony Records, said, look, would you guys be interested in doing the first album for the label? So
I think they'd done the compilation album with his studio, this Metal Fatigue thing, and I think the feedback for our track was really good. So consequently, he rang up and thought, he wanted to start a label, do his first band, and we were the kind of first choice. So obviously we snapped that up pretty quickly, got on with the first album. Over in Hull, and it came out in 83.
83, yeah.
And really took off. You know, quite amazed we were because we were just a small band trying to make our way, and quite quickly the album was selling out really quickly and getting repressed. Yeah. And
do you think because obviously without the drummer for that length of time before you actually had the first album sorted, do you find that may have hindered you at the beginning?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because obviously at that time,
definitely.
obviously with the history shows that the new wave British heavy metal bands there had already took off by the time you'd actually got the drummer ready.
Yeah, we were right at the back end of it, and consequently we never really felt part of that scene anyway, because we emerged as that scene was already kind of peaked. You know, bands like Iron Maiden had been signed, Def Leppard. Came out of that scene as well, which nobody ever refers to. They were, when Sounds magazine started its push, they were really the first band to get pushed. And there was bands like Saxon as well were kind of part of that. But there seems to be a small group of British bands that have been labelled with this new Wobham thing. But we kind of, I think by the time we came out, our influences, we were listening to all the bands that we loved in the 70s, like UFO and Thin Lizzy and Deep Purple. So we didn't really feel part of that, but we've kind of stuck in that box to a certain extent. But the first album took off, and we've had a fairly checkered history ever since of starting and stopping.
Yeah.
We've only recorded 6 albums.
Yeah.
Over that period, which
make it sound only 6 albums.
Well, it's not a great average if you look at it, over that period of time. But there's been a good 10 years in recent history that we weren't performing and playing as a band. We hadn't split up, we were inactive. We split up originally in 86 after the second album, and then that was 10 years, wasn't it?
10 years, well, 9 years.
So
95 when we did the...
So near enough a good decade
we
since.
spent a couple of decades doing sod all, to be honest.
So people that might not be aware of, are you allowed to say the split, why you originally split up after the second album? Was it just musical differences, or was there something a bit more deep?
Musical differences.
Personal differences.
Yeah, well, that'd be part of it, but there was a lot of it was.
Kerrang were pushing at us and sniping at us about, there were. I mean, Kerrang were really looking to America, and at that time, the whole kind of hair metal and glam stuff, and they were really, as a band, you need to be more this, you need to have an image, you need to have a front man, because that was the style of the day.
Yeah.
So Chris was getting a lot of stick. We were trying to cope with that. We had a really kind of poor manager at the time. We then changed management and kind of went out the frying pan at the fire. So we were really unsupported as a band from the industry in terms of management and record label. So that began to kind of affect us, because we just weren't getting support. So you were just looking to each other and kind of, we lost momentum, I think, more than anything else. And it kind of felt like it fizzled out. And probably if we'd have had a good manager who would have told us to get our shit together and say, look, guys, let's get on with the next album, let's get out there and do stuff, probably all that would have been avoided. So it just kind of was a bit of a meltdown, really. Right.
It just seems to fizzle out, and then 10 years later, give or take.
Yeah, there was a friend of mine, Gary Sharp, or a friend of ours, he did our artwork for the first 2 albums. And he used to ring me every now and again when I was running a studio nearby, and he actually said, you should do another album. Time's right, you should do another album. And I just said, look, you get us a deal and we'll do an album, thinking that'll be the end of that. Shut him up.
Yeah.
And literally within days, he came back and said, yeah, I've got your deal with Neat. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, that put the cat amongst the pigeons, didn't it, really?
Yeah, so, me and Chris, we were always part of the same family, really, because Chris married my sister. So there was always that kind of intimate, we're always around each other and seeing each other all the time. So it was quite easy to kind of pick that up and go, shall we do this album then?
Well, during the gap between Hyperactive and the third album, Holy Wars, we were both in separate bands at that time.
Right, so it feels like you still carried on the music.
We still carried on. I got a Radio 1 session with my band. I was a second guitar player down. Andy came along, did guitar work on it. The first demo, the second demo that we actually did of Stuff, Andy were playing guitar on it. We even wrote a song that actually appeared on Holy Wars that we actually wrote while the band was apart.
Right.
So, as he says, it wasn't like we didn't have any association with each other because it was a family thing anyway. So we were always sort of in each other's pockets and listening to what each other was doing. And
we then got one of the original drummers, Dave, back. I can't remember how. I think we did we did like a Lizzie gig somewhere, didn't we? And he was there. I don't know. Anyway, he got back involved. So there's like a 3-piece, because essentially we'd always been a 4-piece. And then that second kind of phase of our career, it was essentially 3 of us. So I was doing all the guitar stuff, and we'd go out live and then take another guitar player out live. So we did.
Usually guitar players out of my bands.
Oh,
yeah,
right,
strangely, I got really
borrowing, as they say.
Well, I got really strong friendships with people that ended up in Chris's band. Andy.
I haven't, but he has.
Yeah, Andy Wilson, Stuart, and Matt. The guys I still talk to now. So Andy came out and did some gigs with us, and we did Holy Wars, then we did Babylon album, and then we did Extreme Machine. We played in 2000. We went and played Wacken in Germany, which was massive and great. And the same year we went out and played in America, a big festival near New York, and so it was going well. And then the record company sold everything they'd got to Sanctuary, and that kind of put a stop to things, really, because it's like, well, all your catalogue now belongs to somebody else.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of politics associated with that.
Yeah, and then they sold that. Quite long after that, they sold out to Universal. So now we've got our catalogue owned by Universal, which is a massive company, and you just can't find out what's going on. But then after that kind of period, we just went again. We went through a few years not doing anything, and
there was a lot of really personal things going off. Not between us, but that were impacting. We lost Andy's dad.
External things that
Andy got divorced. I got divorced. It just seemed like, just as we started talking about it again, something else came in.
It's as if something's always around the corner.
And it was actually Mark that sort of put the bomb up us again and said, look, are we gonna we need to start looking in terms of doing another album. It's been a while. So Mark was really the catalyst to get us moving again. And then Mark had the same sort of problems. Mark got divorced, Mark's mother died, and it just just as a minute it's so Spinal Tap. Just the only thing we've never had is an exploding drummer.
I mean,
So far.
As I said earlier, my brother died last year, and it was at the point where the album had just come out. I think we'd just been over to Germany, and myself and Chris, and that was another, just another kind of catastrophic, stopping your tracks, and it's awful.
Well, we were turning shows down, weren't we? We were offered Cambridge Rock Festival, and we had to turn it down because
just in a state of shock and bereavement, So we've had all that going on, and it wasn't a conscious this has happened, therefore we can't do the album. You just didn't think about it. You didn't think about doing an album.
Sometimes so many things go on. I mean, I know it. Obviously, I've got a day job. This is our hobby. Now, I've always said that I'm not having things take over my life if it's going to affect my family and my kids, because you just can't, because there's more to life, isn't there? And obviously, when you've got such horrendous things that are happening around you, sometimes music just takes a back seat.
At the end of the day, we weren't under contract to anybody, so we didn't. It wasn't like there was somebody saying, right, where's this next album?
Yeah.
So there was no manager, and there was nobody pushing us.
No, if the record company had been there going, let us know when you're ready, there would have been an impetus to kind of okay, we'll get on to that. But that didn't happen. It was us. It was Mark who kind of just said, don't you think you should? And I went to see Chris, and we got, it was quite a long discussion, I suppose, about how we were going to do it, and we'll get in a room and start writing stuff like we did. And that's what we did, and we got Christian involved. Yeah,
and that was also one of the big changes. I mean, when we first started, it was more about writing songs in rehearsals as a band. I mean, Andy'd come with a riff, we'd start playing with it, I'd take it away and start coming up with melodies and going, what do you think to this? And we built the songs as a band.
Yeah.
When it got to the third, fourth and fifth albums, it was more about me and Andy sticking them together in the studio more than anything else.
The Extreme Machine album was done entirely in that way. Just I was getting together with the drummer that we had then, putting riffs on tapes and giving them to Chris, and and then literally we'd go in the studio and we'd start to record, and stuff was being written and arranged in the studio, and that was really creative, made you creative and made you work hard, but in a way there wasn't a band ethos.
I was going to say, so really, I'm assuming you preferred the band together, coming with an idea.
Yeah, it was a definite choice to actually get together as a band, all four of us in a room, and back to Andy, I've got this riff, and away we'd go.
So has the recording process changed? Because obviously, if you're writing the songs together, did you used to record them live as a unit at the same time, and one take, or was it still the same?
No, generally speaking, Andy would, because he's always he's been running the studio for quite some time. When it was in another place, Andy would literally go into the studio with a drummer, not necessarily the drummer that was in the band, but a drummer. And they'd just whack something down, some ideas, and then Andy'd probably play bass over the top of it, and then he'd give me a CD.
Right,
I've got these ideas, and then I would, come up with melodies and lyrics, and then we'd almost semi-arrange them in the studio. Right, if we do this bit here, and this bit here, and this bit here, and this bit here, and then that's how we record it.
You really don't know, doing that method, you don't know until it's nearly done if it's working. Whereas when you're in the room, it's just like, the guitars are going, everything's kicking in. Really that's working.
Yeah, you got. It's I was going to say, the feel's got to be there, hasn't it, for a song?
It's a live thing, isn't it? Rock music is a live, organic process. So you need to be. Bands have always done that from the beginning of bands being invented. Playing in a room.
Sometimes it works in the studio. I mean, probably one of mine and Andy's favourite Savage songs that we've got, which a lot of people hate, is a song called "Smiling Assassin" off Extreme Machine.
We've been playing it on a new set, haven't we? And people.
And it was literally written in the studio. We was a song down. We needed one more song.
Yeah.
And Andy played this riff, we threw something together there, we put down a basic backing track, I took it home that night and came back the next morning with the melodies and lyrics, and that's how we recorded it, and we still one of my favourite Savage songs.
Now you say that some people don't like it. What makes you say that from the track in particular?
That album, we've been playing it in the live set actually. This last kind of tour, these last few gigs, and it's going down really well. It's just that the album that it came from was quite contemporary and quite modern when it came out in 2000 or 99 or whatever it was. And funnily enough, I've been listening to it a lot, this particular album, the last couple of weeks, and I'm really loving listening to it. And it's really heavy, and it's quite brave, and it's quite experimental. Rock fans don't want you to be experimental and brave, they want you to do what you do. So that album didn't really take on with fans, and now it's, we're just kind of playing a few tracks from it. And when it sits in the set, it just sounds like everything else. But when the album came out, it's a bit left field for people. And that was the other thing about the new album, Sons of Malice, was we just wanted to make a really good, straight rock and roll, hard rock, metal album. And we went back to all the influences that we'd originally had. I was certainly listening to a lot of Deep Purple and Thin Lizzy and that kind of stuff. And Van Halen, funny enough, Van Halen were quite a big influence on me as a kid. And that doesn't fit with New Album. It's very kind of American Flash bastard guitar playing, but yeah. I love...
But there's nothing wrong with that.
No, Van Halen is a rhythm player as well, a really incredible rhythm player. And Let It Loose, one or two people on YouTube have commented that made references to Van Halen, and that's like, about time somebody got that.
Yeah.
Because it's not come from Sabbath or anything like that.
No, like I say, it must be nice that your own personal musical influences are coming through, and people are actually recognising that as you're going through.
We're rock fans like everybody else. We love listening to rock music, and we've interviews before. We've listened to stuff from the 60s to last week. There's bands and things coming out all the time, and there's always good stuff. Metal fans get really kind of partisan about, well, it's got to be new album, or it's this, or don't like new metal, or like hair metal but don't like death metal, and it's all just rock music. There was never this delineation between rock music.
Although I'm going to show my age, when we first started out, there was no such thing as heavy metal. You was into heavy rock. That was it. There was one genre, and everybody was classed as that. Whether it's Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Wishbone Ash, Deep Purple, Whitesnake, Led Zeppelin. They were all. We just called them heavy rock bands.
Yeah. Do you find that obviously now with that many different genres and subgenres? Obviously, because you've been around for that long, you've seen it come, go and everything. Do you find there is too many subgenres? Because a lot of bands I speak to, I like to say, if it's good music, it's good music. It doesn't matter what genre it is.
There's a lot more shit about.
It's more accessible, isn't it? There's a whole, the great thing about technology and the internet is it allows everybody to have their go and their say, which is great, but also there's no filter. So there's a lot of poor stuff goes out there as well as good stuff, but good stuff floats to the top. I hope
the cream always comes to the top.
I think the thing with the way that rock music has been sort of compartmentalised over the last 20 years is that, at least in some ways, the good thing about it is, at least in some ways, if you like a specific type of music, it can be quite easily identified when you're trying to find something new. So if someone turns around to you and says, "Do you like thrash metal?" You say, "Well, yeah," and check this band out then. This is a thrash metal band. Or if you like emo or screamo or whatever, it's quite easy to find a new band in that respect.
Yeah, if you take New Album, it's a prime example of a very narrow genre of British rock music, and I don't think it represents the best of British rock music at all. There's been lots of waves of British heavy metal over the years, and that particular era in the kind of early 80s, there's a lot of some good stuff come out of it, and it's longevity ultimately. Some of those bands are still going. I think that is testament to whether they're any good or not. But I've enjoyed the whole kind of grunge movement. One of my favourite bands is King's X, who I don't know where they fit. And there's I like Foo Fighters and God knows what. So it's just good rock music ultimately. But I think Christian's right. People like that kind of belonging to that club.
Yeah,
You
you
know,
see
well,
it.
I like death metal and you don't, you know, so...
Yeah, see, I get myself into a bit of bother with it, a bit of trouble, because I always think that a lot of this is down to press giving out specific genres. And there came a point where people didn't want to go to the gigs, but they could say, "Oh, I like emo music," or "That band's like this. I don't need to go to the gig. I know roughly what sort of genre they are."
To be honest, I wouldn't blame the press for it. I think all the press does is like anything else. It's a commodity, and whatever the 18 to 30-year-olds are into, that's what they're going to push, because they're the people that tend to generally buy the magazines, buy the records, do the shows. So that's the bit. There's no... I mean, as Andy said, Deep Purple can still do a massive tour. You know, Led Zeppelin could just play anywhere and fill it tomorrow if they wanted to.
Well, Proof has been sad, hasn't it, recently?
But that doesn't necessarily mean that a lot of 18-year-olds will know who they are and want to go and see them.
No.
They might do, but... I mean, I'd be delighted if there was an 18-year-old band appeared that sounded like Zeppelin or Sabbath or whatever, you know, or what else sounded completely new, but had a bit of guts to it. I think that's what's lacking, you know, since grunge. I can't really, you know, we had Britpop in terms of a movement in the UK, but there's been no real kind of like movement, and it's something that people can coalesce around, and you know, it's there.
It was in America. I mean, new metal is predominantly an American thing. I mean, one of my favourite bands is Disturbed. They're definitely a new metal band.
Yeah.
Christians so completely into Machine Head, but we all listen to different things, but also like a lot of the same things.
It is, you know, like you say, it's either good or it's bad. It's good at what it's meant to be, or it's bad. You know, some people. I've got friends and family who Slipknot wouldn't dream of that. I think Slipknot are great, but it's what they do. You know, they do it really well, and that's the important thing. Whether a reggae band do reggae really well, you know, that's the thing. It's making sure whatever you do the best possible job.
Yeah. So from moving on from that to a degree, since 1978, have you seen a dramatic difference in the crowds that come to watch your gigs?
Depends where you play.
Really? In what respect?
If we play in Germany or Belgium or Holland, it's just like it was 1983 again. Just like it was 1983. Right. And then you come back here to a classic rock festival, for example, Cambridge Rock Festival, because it was quite strange. We'd just played Headbangers Open Air in Germany, and it was 1983 all over again. Everybody was dressed the same, they all looked the same. In fact, they probably were the same. And it was just that it was. We were back there again. Yeah. Then we came home, played the Cambridge Rock Festival the following week. Big crowd watching us, but completely different action, and they look completely. They didn't look like metal fans. They didn't really react during the numbers, whereas in Germany they were just going mental all the way through. It's the whole bit, head banging and all the rest of it. And I'm sort of looking out thinking, God, we're dying here. But we were getting massive reaction at the end of every number. So it's a completely different thing now. Now, back in 83, how they were acting in Germany now is exactly how the gigs used to be in the UK. That's people went to shows and were headbanging and we're up for it.
It's tribal. It's really tribal back in the day, and used to have that in Europe. And I'm thinking over here it's much more mixed. People are, you know, I remember going to see Foo Fighters and Biffy Clyro at Milton Keynes, and the audience was like 70,000 people, and it was like got people that you think would be in Mansfield or in town on a Friday, not rock fans. It was just completely weird because they were just people. It was like, so people were there because they thought they ought to be there. Well, Foo Fighters, I've heard of them, so we'll go. It's a big festival, but they weren't what I call rock fans. You know, who died in the wool, buy all the albums and everything. It was just like a, you know, that's the thing to go to this year.
Like a corporate do.
Yeah. Whereas in Europe, it is much more fanatical, and consequently you play to bigger audiences. We get treated much better, I have to say, by promoters. When we go there, you know, you fly out, you get a hotel, you get fed, you get
ferried about.
Yeah, it's really look after you, really treat you with respect. You don't get the same kind of thing, you know. In the UK.
Do you think because, as you said, from like in the 80s, it was a complete other way around? Do you think this country's probably going to go full circle again, and there will be a big resurgence, and the fans will be there, really into the music, rather than just sitting back?
You can hope so.
Or is it just people just think it's the British reserved nature now of just watching?
There is, I think there is an underground of younger kids that that are looking back at that stuff.
I think young people that
But to say there'd be a movement like that, no, I would say no. It'd be something different.
it'd be different, but it needs to be something really offensive that we don't like, because that's how it should be. Like when punk came along, the kind of society went, whoa, hang on, don't like this. And
That was another thing. I mean, most new wobbin bands would sit there and categorically deny that they followed punk and punk had anything to what they do. I wouldn't.
No.
We loved punk bands. We loved the energy and the very fact that they were so irreverent to everybody.
And that's what's missing, I think.
And it was excellent. Yeah. We didn't mould ourselves on punk bands, but I could understand the sensibility, and we sort of felt part of that.
But I think young people today are much more open-minded in terms of looking back and listening to music. We all get people coming to us at gigs who are, 20 years younger and love all that stuff, And you'll get people who, that's why new metal came about, because people listen to hip hop and people listen to metal, and would kind of just go from one thing to the other and not kind of, when I was that age, you were a metal fan, you were a rock fan, and that was it. And you liked punk, but you didn't really necessarily tell a lot of people because it was slightly the other scene, but actually we all loved it. I loved Stranglers and Sex Pistols, stuff like that. But I think young people today, generally, I meet guys come in the studio 16, 17, and they're playing, they want to be Slash, which is 20 years ago, or they want to be Hendrix, which is 40 years ago, and they're just kids. When I was a guitar player at 15, 16, it was, I was into Michael Schenker and Gary Moore and all those guys in the moment. And even then, I thought Hendrix was, that's history. Where I've kind of rediscovered that as I got older. But yeah, we need, it'd be great. It might not be something that we can ride on. And I think, there's always going to be a market for our bands and what we're trying to do. I think it's a massive niche market. But it'd be great if something new emerged, some new kick-ass kind of rock thing would be great.
So if we go on to the Sons of Malice album, we'd say it was released last year.
Last year, yeah.
Seemed to go down well.
Yeah, we've had probably the best reviews, consistent reviews that we've ever had. Maybe apart from the first album, which has become some kind of
icon.
Weird, like people just crazy about it. But Sons of Malice, we've had lots and lots of reviews, a lot of online stuff, obviously, magazines, interviews, and universally, probably we've had maybe 1 or 2 Duff reviews, and there's been 70 or 80.
There's almost 100 reviews of the album,
and
probably
really
3 or 4 that were not very good.
Yeah,
and I can pretty much tell you the countries that they're not. It doesn't go down well in.
Right. Specific areas.
Very specific, because they want to hear Loose and Lethal again.
Right. English-speaking countries, so UK, America, Canada, Australia have particularly embraced it, which is great. So yeah, it's been, we didn't really know what to expect. We hadn't put anything out for a long time, and when we recorded it and mixed it, it was like, I think it's good, And now it's had a bit of a life, it's kind of taken on a, where there's certain tracks on there that we just always want to play, and the responses that we've had for those tracks for the album, But it's hard because people want to hear the old stuff, and it's all bands suffer from this, especially even established, huge bands. It's still like, well, can you play all the old stuff? And it's always a constant struggle to write and record new stuff, because as a musician, that's what your lifeblood is. It's being creative, doing new things, not hacking through the song that you played 25 years ago. That's nice. It's fun when you're doing it live, but part of you needs to record and write and produce new material. Yeah. And we did. We wrote 16 tracks. We released 13. We kept 3 back bonus tracks, and I still listen to those. Think I wish they were on the album because I think they're great, you know. And that's good because we couldn't really decide what to leave off and what to leave on.
Do you feel you've got the same energy now when you recorded the Sons of Malice than you did when you did the first album?
Different.
Just a completely different feel.
Completely different feeling, yeah.
Yeah, because you're doing it, I think.
Because when we first did, I mean, we was naive, green,
Well, I think
all the rest of it. When we first did the first album, it was just so exciting to be putting a record out.
Yeah.
Now it's more about, it's got to be exciting because we've got a body of work and we're trying to do better each time.
Right.
But strangely, I think the first album, there was that excitement and that kind of naivety about, because we didn't know what people would think, so it kind of freed you up because you weren't really bothered. You weren't trying to create anything other than the best album you could. When we got a really good response, the second album became quite difficult and quite pressure, and the second album sounds very different to the first album because a lot to do with press and media, everybody looking towards America, the big production. Whereas this album was kind of full circle. It's like we've really got nothing to prove, because if we put it out and nobody likes it, then so what? So as long as we like it, so it wasn't that kind of naivety, but it felt like slightly freeing,
right,
just to go, we're going to make a great album.
I would add to that because I think we've sort of got a reputation for not keep doing the same thing at all. Any of our albums, we go with all intention of, well, after we've done an album, they'll ask you, what are you going to do next? Oh, it'll be more at same, and it isn't. Never is.
It's whatever feels right at the time, I
yeah,
guess.
and like with the first album, or the second album, or the third album, fourth, fifth, sixth album, it's always the only barometer we've got is what we think. And if we like it, that's why it's going to get recorded.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
I mean, having Christian on guitar has given it a different flavour as well, because his musical influences are slightly
Heavier.
heavier, and it's brought heaviness to the band, and it really feels like we've got two guitar players now, because for several of the albums I did all the guitar work, and then it was a second guitar player coming out live. First two albums we had a rhythm guitar player who didn't really feature very much in that process, so that's different as well. So it feels like we've got two guitars really driving the recording itself. It's the best thing sonically we've ever done.
Right.
Recorded here, it sounded amazing. Mark, who's away, he's gone surfing as we speak, did an amazing job. He's a great drummer, but he also recorded it and captured what we sound like. And that of itself is just like, isn't it great to put an album on and go, we sound like that, that's us.
Yeah.
And if anything, we've got to live up to that when we play live, where the other albums, often it was a case of, well, it's obviously much better live because it's bigger and whatever. So, yeah, on all kind of levels, it's been a success in our turn.
A favourite track off Sons of Malice? Have you got different ones?
It's hard to say.
Yeah, I think there's
Black and Blue,
tracks that we all
Rage
like.
Within.
And then there's some, like there's a track at the end. Mark's favourite, I would say, is Fallen Idols, which is the last track on the album, and it's a bit different for us. It's a bit sleazy, and I really like that. And there's a track called Blow, and we all like some of the same stuff, like Rage Within, Hanging Tree, the acoustic thing we've just done. I don't know, Christian, what?
No, I'm the same. The first 4 or 5 songs on the album, I really like Masters of War. I really like that song. Never ever play it.
And I like Waking the Dead because it is very
80s.
Yeah.
But I noticed, we have been playing the album a lot. Playing tracks off it when we've been doing live shows, and I've been kind of interested to read recently with bands like Def Leppard. Joe Elliott was saying, there seems to be no interest for a new Def Leppard album, and they've just done a video of Hysteria, the whole thing in
Well, they've been doing the Vegas thing, haven't they? Playing Hysteria over and over again in Vegas.
So they've done that, and that's kind of nostalgia. And then, like Van Halen got back together, did a new album, and I really like the album. You look at their set list, 2 songs. So they've recorded a whole new album and only playing 2 songs, and everything else is, all the stuff. And I can understand why bands do that, but we've just gone, this is a new album, we love it, we're going to play it whether you want us to or not.
So half the set is the new album, generally speaking.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, because as you said, so many bands classic bands will play the old material for the fans because they're expecting that's what they want to hear. But if they've been out and got the new album,
it's a
part
difficult
of
balance. You want to, you don't want to them to come to a gig and not feel they know anything, but you want to introduce them to stuff. Like when we played in Germany, Hamburg recently, we were asked, will we play all of Loose and Lethal? And we were really kind of sceptical about doing it, if I'm honest. But we did it, and we really enjoyed it. But we don't want to get, and then we've been asked, oh, could you do that again somewhere else? Like, no.
Yeah, I was going to say, there seems to be a tradition at the moment where they get bands to play certain albums in their entirety.
Yeah,
Metallica went through that. And
it just seems, I think a lot of anniversaries have kind of fell around the same sort of time, don't they? Like the Black Album was the 25th anniversary last year.
I think it is a nostalgia thing. I think that's exactly what it is.
And it's pandering to that,
and it's pandering to that, and we've just sat and discussed, and we've said we they want us to be a tribute to a Souls band. Don't want to do that.
No, times change. You want to play as you are now.
We might do it again.
You?
I'm not saying we're never going to do it again. We might do it again because we're looking for an opportunity to record it live anyway.
Yeah,
so we might do it again
as a live album, and that's partly because
I
really hate the recording of the first album because it sounds like.
Is that when you say you hate it? Is that because the amount of times you've listened to it back?
No, he hated it when we recorded.
Really?
It's really heavily EQ'd and guitar. I mean, ironically, people have talked about the guitar sound, and to me, it just sounds like a bulldog with a wasp in its mouth. It's just can't bear it.
That's
people love it, But I think if we can re-record it live, it's a different thing. But it will at least sound like what it sounds like in my head.
Right, because it's strange because most bands say that they've all got to be 99% happy with it at least before they'll release it. But obviously, you seem to have gone to say when it was good, you hate it. Was it pushed out even though you didn't like what it was going, or is it was out of your hands?
I mean, we recorded. I listened, funny enough, last night to the 7-inch single.
It's a lot better.
That we recorded prior to that, and it sounds a lot better. And in a way, because we just hired the studio, recorded the single, we mixed it, if you like, we produced it, and then when Daryl was doing the album, it's kind of like, well, he's putting the money up, and it's his time, and therefore he mixes it. And I've just felt, not all the tracks, but some of the tracks, just think, oh God, I find it quite hard to listen to. The drums aren't loud enough, and the guitar, but I'm in a minority of 3 probably, or even not 3, probably one.
I would agree. I like it.
Right.
So
it's just
I don't listen.
preference.
I don't listen to the sound of it. I listen to what's on there.
I just don't listen to it really.
Yeah, I'm with Andy though. I like to listen to music that's well produced. It's all right listening to an album, but if it's, like St Anger, St Anger's really oddly produced, but in some ways it's kind of endearing, isn't it? Yeah, it draws you to it because it stands out. But then you listen to Death Magnetic, which is another poorly produced album, and it's toss. It's a really bad album, but Black Album, fantastic album. And the Load albums even, really good production, good songs, it's great albums.
Yeah.
The sound of a rock band is so important. It's just everything. It's personally, if when I'm playing guitar, if the sound of the guitar doesn't sound right, my playing will suffer massively. It's like a psychological thing. So listen to the first album, it's like, oh, I really wish, like doing a live album would be great because it's like a fresh take on it. I think re-recording the first album would be pointless. And I'm in a minority of 2 apparently, so the rest of the world loves it.
Yeah.
And you've got to kind of accept that and celebrate it.
I didn't say the sound of it is frankly shite, but I don't. That's not the bit that washes over me. The bit that washes over me is the songs that are on there.
Right.
And I can listen to it because of the songs. And there's 8 songs on that album, and there's not one filler. Every one is a fucking classic, as far as I'm concerned. Every one. And I love playing them all live as well.
Right.
Well, some of them, we played tracks like White Hot, and we hadn't. I can't remember the last time we played them. You're talking decades, And that's quite interesting to go, no, this is actually quite good,
It was awesome. Playing the whole album, playing Ed Banger's Open Air was awesome. Yeah. It was really good.
And the fact that the crowd were feeding off it, despite
singing along and
our willingness, or lack of willingness to be a nostalgia band, but it was fun, when you've got hundreds and hundreds of people punching in the air and singing all the lyrics, that's nice.
But to be fair, we opened up with 3 tracks off the Suns. 2 tracks off the Suns album, and they went down just as well. We got the same reaction from them, people singing along and headbanging, and the crowd was they were really into it.
I do remember that. Yeah, I was a bit shocked that they seemed to know the 2 from the new album as well.
Rage Within, it's kind of
it does hark back to those days.
Yeah,
anyway.
but Black and Blue is just something completely different, like totally unsavage, I suppose. But because it's heavy, people they were digging it. Good.
So now, we've got to get on to the acoustic gigs, the acoustic songs you've just done for us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful you agreed to do it. How did it feel for you recording them? Because obviously it's out of your normal comfort zones.
Strange.
Yeah, massively out of the comfort zone.
Positive, strange?
Yeah, that one for me. I don't
it
know.
was enjoyable to do. It was nice to do something different,
when
definitely.
We started rehearsing, it was like, oh, this is a bit naked. And then when we rehearsed last night, I felt it, this is beginning to work now. I always find that kind of with the rehearsal process where things begin to gel. And for me, there's a point where it's all a bit shit, and then there's a point where it tips into, actually, it's all right, it's pretty good. And like for me, the most fun was doing Let It Loose, because it's just not something that you would think of as an acoustic track. And when we were rehearsing it, for gigs, I think we just, at that point, we knew we were going to do this. It was like playing it on a clean guitar and just thinking it's like kind of almost like a bluegrass or banjo or something like that. And that was a real blast. Out of all of them, for me, I thought that was just really good fun. So I've enjoyed it. It's been great. It is hard. It's not something we would normally do.
No, because again,
within the context of this, anyway.
No, but as a musician, it was quite a challenge to do, and I think sometimes you need a challenge in order to progress as a musician as well. Do you know what I mean?
As long as you're happy, it's a positive one. That's our set. Yes.
Yeah. Really
the difficulty for me is the fact I've not got 2 distorted guitars and drums that I've got to compete against. So it's trying to find the right place to sit in there with vocal on something that you would normally just rip somebody's face off.
Yeah.
And it's not suitable when you're doing acoustic stuff.
No. It's
so
trying
it's very difficult to sort of just take it down just that little bit to the right place.
Well, listening to it from at the back there, it sounded really good, I've got to be honest. And obviously when the guys actually listen to it and can get the tracks off to YouTube and things, I'm sure they'll agree. You did a great job with it. It's even though it's a completely different feel to what you expect from the album and everything else.
Well,
you could still get the sentiment there across, and it was
acoustic, and I do it a lot. And some of the songs on the new album come from noodling on it. I think you can come up with a really heavy riff on acoustic, and you just think if it sounds good on an acoustic, it's going to sound fucking awesome on a big fat guitar. So I play acoustic a lot, but these songs have never been that kind of framework. So it was a challenge, but I think
I love an acoustic intro.
Yeah. Just start it off nice and slow,
and then
just
rip somebody's head off again. Yeah.
I mean, how did you go about choosing the tracks? Did they just something that naturally you all just agreed on, or was
we jammed on a few?
We tried a few.
We only tried about 5 or 6 maybe.
We tried 5, didn't we?
And
one No Ordinary Day was from the Babylon album. Was the actual album version of it was half acoustic anyway. It wasn't. The band came in sort of halfway through. We just did.
So that was an obvious one to do.
A different version of it, kept it all acoustic, and obviously Hanging Tree has got an acoustic intro, but we just need to have the guitars afterwards.
Because it's kind of western-y anyway, it was really obvious that it would lend itself to an acoustic performance. Do you know what I mean? Similarly with Black and Blue, I think we kind of we worked on Black and Blue quite a lot, and it was
to change it quite a lot to make it work.
To make it work, yeah.
Even though it's a bluesy song. As a full band, and it lends itself to you can get away with playing blues on an acoustic guitar.
Yeah, like I say, there's certain things you can get away with, and there's certain things that I suppose deep down they're not gonna.
That one track actually is just seemed to have labelled us suddenly with a lot of reviews. It's quite a bluesy album.
All of a sudden we want it.
It's like it's one track, and there's Blow, which has kind of got that kind of groove, but it's pretty heavy.
Although, don't get me wrong, Whitesnake are an awesome band. But you know, I've always liked David Coverdale anyway. So
the weird thing is, as well, we've had a lot of comments like, really positive about the album, but as though Loose and Lethal is just heavier, and it's just not. You listen to Loose and Lethal, it's like, it's quite light, and in those days, the kind of bands that were playing around that time,
also, I've been accused of we're not as fast as Loose and Lethal album, yet most of the songs on there are mid-paced.
Yeah, it's only Let It Loose.
Mid-paced is like the way we normally write songs.
Yeah. Let It Loose has kind of almost defined what people think we are as a band, as a really fast up-tempo track. And we've got, each album's got some fast tracks, but, one of our big influences when we were growing up was AC/DC. So just kind of driving, mid-paced kind of thing,
And Judas Priest and Scorpions.
So many great influences brought into the mix there.
We would,
But we would be listening to Scorpions when it was early John Roth.
Take
really
by
early Force
days.
album, things like that.
And we even think now, if we were to be put on a big bill somewhere, then with those kind of bands, not the kind of power metal bands that we play a lot with in Europe, because doesn't sit particularly well. We're quite happy to do it, but it's not the kind of music we play.
No, we tend to stand out like a sore thumb on a lot. I mean, the last two festivals we've done in Europe, the one in Belgium especially, is constant, falsetto vocals everywhere and shredding guitars. Well,
but I don't mind that.
We played with Symphony X.
I really don't mind that. I like going there and being the odd band out. Because you're going to remember us.
Yeah, they'll be you
they'll
stand
all
out
wash
for
up, but you've heard them all
reasons.
before. We're different.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree, yeah. But it is, you're aware of it when you're doing it, when you're there thinking, we're not
These
like
are
this.
shite.
We're not.
Yeah. Well, final question, I suppose, is what's happening for you guys over the next few months? Really, obviously, it's.
Andy's going on holiday.
I'm going on holiday tomorrow, Sunday. Well, writing a new album, essentially.
As soon as Mark and Andy are back off the holidays, we back in here and we shall start writing for a new album.
Right.
We're trying to get some more shows put together, and hopefully we've been trying all year to get a live album recorded, and it's been an absolute bloody nightmare. But we're still working on that because we want to try and get that done. So
There's plenty
we've
of
been
things.
talking today about how to do it. We may even do Loose and Lethal live and put that out as a double album with the new album. So we've got Live and Lethal and the new album is in one package.
The reason being is that there'll be a lot of people interested in Loose and Lethal live, but they would be then, kind of listening.
Forced to listen to the new album.
There's one way of doing it.
I think it'd be quite a shrewd thing to do, and it would still only be the cost of a normal album, I presume. We haven't really gone into budgeting, but that's just one idea we've discussed.
Yeah. There's plenty of things to think of, and the future's bright, I guess.
Yeah, because we're just building. We're building the brand back up again. It's
that's pretty much it.
Having had 10, 12 years of doing nothing, with the band, with Savage as a name, it's a slog. You're getting the name back out. People are beginning to go, oh yeah, I've heard that and I've seen that. So it's just that you've just got to keep that momentum going.
And we are a bit further down the road now, so it's starting to feel more like a coherent band as well, as opposed to at the start it was. It's still me and Andy.
We're the tightest as well.
And they constantly keep referring to themselves as the hired guns, and they're not.
They're not hired because we don't pay them.
We don't pay them.
Well,
social workers as well.
So hopefully,
social workers.
They're going to be a little bit. They're going to be more involved.
Yeah, right.
For the next one.
But we live, especially having done a set of gigs. By the time we got to Cambridge, we were really on it, weren't we? We were smoking, and that felt good.
I'm always smoking.
Eh?
I'm always smoking.
You're always smoking. But it just felt like we could have done with another, bunch of gigs because we were just really getting into our groove. Yeah. And when I started out playing Flying V in whenever it was, from the age of about 16, I bought Flying V, and that's kind of got retired really, and playing Les Pauls and stuff, and then started using it recently.
Unretired.
And then
officially unretired.
Christian's just bought.
shaking of the head there.
I've got myself a little white V as well. Yeah.
All right.
So
Not quite as cool as Andy's.
Not as battered, maybe.
Yeah, probably a little bit more metal.
But so there's going to be a couple of 5Es on stage, which I think will make a bit of a statement. And it really feels like we're getting our mojo back, really.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, guys, for that. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With the guns to appetize, taking